Okay. For those that don't know me, my name's Ian Mavric. I come here every year from Australia. I give a talk. I know. Don't mind if I sound slurry sometimes. I suffer a little bit of jet lag while I'm here. It's all fortunately gone by the time I have to fly home on Monday. All right. So today I'm going to be talking about these two machines, in particular the Tandy 2000. So this will be a slide presentation. I'll give my thoughts and comments. I've researched it as well as possible. Some recollections may vary. And my timeline, because of the way my mind thinks, jumps all over the place. So just you'll have to bear with me on this. I'll try to make it interesting, and we'll try and get this over as quick as needed. So in 1984, Tandy decided, among other computer manufacturers, that they needed to go down the MS-DOS path, and that turned out to be a good idea, and this is how they did it. Okay, can anyone tell me what that picture's from?
A computer.
Thank you. Who said Model 4 motherboard? Yeah. So that's a Z80 out of a Model 4. Look at that, 1982. So the Model 4 was designed in 1982 and was released in around August 1983. Now, has anyone here been in design, development and production? What's the first thing that happens after you've locked down a design and put it into production? It changes, but you also start designing its replacement. Okay, so the Model 4 was a good thing, and that was the big sort of success of 1982 that got released in 1983. Okay, Model 4 motherboard released August 83. Okay, Radio Shack's product lines at the time, and bear in mind I'm not talking about the home computer, the Coco here, or the business only 8-inch systems, but the mid-range consumer power systems. So they were marketing the Model 4 as a home and small business micro, and they were about to release the Model 2000 as a business professional personal computer. Personal computer obviously being borrowed from the name of the IBM that had been released a couple years earlier. Whoa, look at all that. Okay. So some people may have read or heard about that plans were put in place for the replacement for a Model 4 being a more enhanced Model 5. And though it obviously didn't go anywhere, this was a list of possible things they could incorporate in a Model 5. And so the important ones here are a 16-bit processor, up to 512K of RAM, colour, I don't know what you'd make it compatible with, but colour, better sound, detachable keyboard, floppy drives are standard, yes, boot ROM, blah-de-blah. Okay, so that's quite a list of things, and it's quite different to the Model 4. So it didn't go anywhere, and even I wrote an article about it in Tris 8-bit in 2013, a while ago now. So there's an excerpt from it there. But what I postulated was that list of requirements for the Model 5, with one or two exceptions, actually aligns pretty well with what became the Tandy 2000 and 1000. So, all right. So let's go back to 1981. Tandy's home offering had 48K of RAM and a 2 megahertz 8-bit CPU and two 184K disk drives, and it was monochromatic. It was a good price point, and it sold like hotcakes. But then the guy came along, the IBM PC 5150, and rewrote the rules on what a personal computer should be, and it was a runaway success in offices and well-to-do homes all over the place. 640K RAM, much faster, 16-bit processor, 360K disk drives, Still had a monochrome monitor. You could upgrade it with a colour one, of course. So comparing these two machines, you know, this is clearly the future, and it's what we use today. Go forward 2 more years, Tandy did enhance the Model 3, an evolution they called it. It evolved into the Model 4, which was a bit better, 640 to 128k RAM, 4 megahertz. Still the same disk drives and monochromatic. Meanwhile, IBM re-engineered the PC to become the PC XT, we all know. Same RAM, same processor, but a hard drive, more expansion slots, more opportunity to customise the machine. And so those who know their history, PC by 1983, early 1983, PC and XT were on fire, if you remember. IBM couldn't build them fast enough. I don't like to say that the Model 4 was stale, but when you compare it to the XT sold at the same time, it was a little bit stale. Having said that, Model 4 is still my favourite computer of all time. Okay. All right. In September 1983, it was announced at the time the world's most powerful MS-DOS PC, and it was. And it was trash-tastic, or crap-tastic. Let's look at it in detail. So this catalogue, Radio Shack catalogue, is the 1984 one, and so it would have come out in September of 1983. And the product available in stores late November, early December. All right, so Radio Shack, when they went and designed this thing, is anyone here who worked at Radio Shack in R&D at the time? Yep, okay. So a lot of this is I'm just speculating, but it's going to be pretty close. So Radio Shack, to my mind, sort of said, if we're going to build an MS-DOS machine, it's going to be the best darn MS-DOS machine that you can buy. You can see I've got one set up here. It looks pretty neat in its nice white plastic design and sharp, easy to read monitor. It doesn't weigh a ton like the XT, and we'll get to the details of the machine first. So if you've had a cursory look over this list here, you can see in just about every area the 2000 exceeds the PC. Notice I've said that the XT has an 8 16-bit CPU, so the CPU runs at 16 bits, but the bus itself is an 8-bit bus, which is where the term 8-bit ISA card come along. Tandy said, yeah, let's put more RAM in, so we've got 768K instead of 640. PC's got 360K drives. Tandy says, why don't we put 720s or a hard drive or both? CGA graphics is, well, let's face it, even at the time it came out, it was pretty ordinary. So it's 320 by 200 in 4 colours. Tandy graphics, I believe designed by Paul Schreiber, 640 by 400, and your choice of 8 colours out of 16. If you didn't go for graphics, if you didn't go for colour graphics on the PC, you got monochrome and no graphics. You just got text. Mono mode on a 2000 has graphics and text. A downside, really the only downside is this one here. It's got 4 expansion slots and they're not compatible with the PC. 90-key keyboard. I find it quite nice to type on, actually, and it's similar in feel to a Model 4P keyboard, and it was carried over to the Tandy 1000. Vintage collectors these days will espouse the virtue of the IBM Model F buckling spring keyboard, and I actually agree with them as well. That's quite a classic and hard to beat. IBM didn't include PC or MS-DOS with the computer, which is kind of odd. It's like buying an automobile and then having to pay extra for the keys, as far as I'm concerned. So Tandy included it. Accessory cards for the 2000, you only buy them at Tandy. Compatibility of the PC, well, it's got to be 100% because that's what it is. On this thing, unfortunately, it was practically none, less than 5% is compatible. And the price was, well, it was reasonable. It was cheaper than the PC. Right. Yeah. So what happened was, as best I can tell from the media of the time, was announced in '83. Reviewers get their hands on it in November '83. 80 Micro, being a TRS-80 magazine, loved it, talked it up, and had some articles about it. But by March 1984, the shack realised it wasn't selling, not at the rate that they wanted it to. '84, April, its reputation was getting around that that it's a great machine, and if the software you want to run runs on it, it's fantastic. But if you just want to go to a non-Radio Shack place and buy software, MS-DOS software, and run it on it, it almost certainly won't work. Now, I'll get to more of that and how that is solved later on, but that was kind of the reason people were moving to MS-DOS in the computing world, is that it expands their choice of places they can buy software from. And '84, it was May '84. It's kind of, we got to design something better. This thing's not gonna float. So I don't really know how badly it sold, but these Tandy 2000s are around and they're still running. They're definitely well built, and like I said, I quite like the machine. All right, was it really that bad? It turned out to be, once the computer was available and the software developers were able to get it and patch their programs to work on the 2000, they found that that was the best computer to run them on. It had the most megahertz, most MIPS, a 16-bit bus. It chugged through data like anything. It was great for recalculations in Lotus 1, 2, 3. If you don't know what that was the killer app of the time. Drove early PC sales just to get that spreadsheet. Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is running on this thing here at the moment, much better in 8-color 640 or whatever that is than 2 or 4-color CGA, and the CGA had a flickery nature to it, and other stuff. DBase 3, yeah, okay, database. VersaCAD. So prior to this, or even while this was for sale, CAD machines would cost you, much as a luxury car. You could do basic CAD work with this and recalculations and stuff like that. This thing was great at it. And an early version of Windows. And in fact, IBM didn't eventually make machines faster than this until '87. All right, I talked about Windows there. This guy, everyone remember this ad? And he's right, and he's saying it what we know then, what we know now. If you want to run Windows, the more gigahertz you got and the more memory you got, the better it runs. And that's basically what he's saying here. This was the most powerful machine available at the time, and of course, once Windows is patched to run on it, it's bloody brilliant. Okay, let's have a look at a little more of the technical side of the 2000 here. It's got an 80186, which is a weird sounding processor. Not many people have heard from it. So it went from 8088 in the XT. A few systems like Tandy went with the 80186, and then I don't know if IBM took note of Tandy or just decided we're not going to produce a system with an 80186 and jump straight to the 80286. And so that became the IBM PC-AT, which ran at 6 megahertz, and for most drag race type applications against each other, this thing still outran it. You can see the motherboard of the Tandy compared to a IBM PC-8 16-bit motherboard versus a full 16-bit motherboard. There's quite a lot more going on with it. So people sometimes ask, these two cards here are the first, a 256K RAM, 128K each. That's where the first 256K of the Tandy 2000 goes. All right. Tandy doesn't like, or didn't, up until the Tandy 1000, people opening their computers and busting the warranty seal. So they come up with a method where you can add cards to the 2000 without opening the case. So you pull them out of the back and they slide in. And the downside of that is that the cards don't look anything like a PC card. So that's a regular VGA card of the time at the top, and that's a Tandy 1000 graphics card. So it's kind of slick, actually, how they did that, and it works pretty well, but the range of cards available for this thing is not great. All right, so here's a picture of it with lots of software. So like I said before, Tandy didn't just dump the computer after a year or 8 months or something and say forget it. They persevered with it, and other companies got on board with the grunty nature of the computer and patched their software to run on the thing. So if you bought, say, Lotus Symphony from a vendor, if it's not for the Tandy 2000, it won't go, but the one that runs on it runs better than any other version of it. I read somewhere, I forget where I read it now, but the programmers at Lotus Corporation were able to patch 123 to run on this thing in 48 hours. It required so few patches, but once they were done, there it was. So this lists like a shopping list of popular software at the time, and if you had, say, an XT or even an AT computer side by side, you'd say this thing runs it far better. So eventually they did, like I said, make enough software to make the computer make sense. All right, so they went back to the drawing board with what became known, I think it was called Project August, I read it somewhere, and it became the Tandy 1000 that we all know. All right. So at the time that decision was made, IBM was working on the AT, Advanced Technology, and the PC Junior. So who remembers the PC Junior? What was the one or two good things about it? Graphics and sound, yeah. Everything else was rubbish. And that's got a good keyboard in it, but the first keyboard that even came with it was worse than the Cocos. Sorry, Coco people. But, All right. And Tandon Corporation went to Tandy and said, hey, can you sell our plain Blancmange XT compatible under your name? And so Tandy didn't want to design just another plain compatible. They already had one sourced from Tandon. So they had to look at where can we look at the Tandy 1000 and make it a little bit unique and appealing. All right, so the PC-AT was a runaway success. It was slower but more expensive than the Tandy 2000, and the PC Junior was on the market for around 14 months and no one bought it. But its graphics was far better. So this is the same game program, and you can see at the top there, that's PC Junior graphics, and at the bottom there is regular CGA. So, yeah, two things must have happened at Tandy. They didn't know the PC Junior would flop, and they thought the graphics and sound were cool, because they were. So they had a eureka moment. So let's put the PC Junior graphics and sound into Project August, and since most people will be using it at home, and sell it for cheaper than the PC Junior. They were onto a winner. So there it is, it came out. Cheap enough price. I mean, the devil's in the detail. Monitor and second drive's not included, but it's a start. Last year, who was here last year and heard me talk about the crapulence of the Tandy 1000 until you added some cards and stuff to it? Yeah, I still stand by that. It was a good basis, but as a machine to use straight out of the box, you had to add more RAM and drives and stuff to make it useful. Dishonourable mention. The RAM's too small, it's only got one disk drive, it's got 3 expansion slots, no serial port. I was a BBSer at the time, so I needed something to connect my modem to. You can add a hard drive to it. It takes a bit of work. So yeah, I'll elaborate. Most people by 1985 were using dual disk drives. 128K, it ran DeskMate, which came with the computer beautifully. And but once you started adding other game software and things like that, you realised that 128K was too slow, and it didn't have the DMA chip that the next memory upgrade came with, and that actually really boosted the performance of the machine. Like I said, no serial port. It was difficult to add a hard drive. There's not a lot of space in there. If you put it outside, the hard drive worked okay. But what they got right was the graphics and sound became a new pseudo standard. After a few years, people just started calling it Tandy graphics. They'd forgotten altogether that PC Junior even existed. And that graphics and sound carried through with nearly all of the Tandy 1000s right through its life over the next kind of 8 or 9 years or something. The price was good considering it's a Tandy. Took standard 8-bit cards, so none of that problem with this guy. And could be turned into a decent PC for under 2,000. And by that I meant a RAM card, a second drive, and a mono monitor, and it was all right. And the good thing was the software compatibility was 95% or more. And in fact, the only compatibility issue that showed up with the software was because they chose an odd keyboard that had a different keyboard arrangement to what people were expecting on a plain XT or AT computer. Hooray! Okay, so they're finally on a success. It sold really well. It was really well received. And so much so that once the development costs and everything were recovered, they could even drop the price, 18 months or so later. People that were using the Model 4 were sort of thinking, well, I can, for a few $100s more, I can have a PC compatible. So while the Model 4 kept being available and sold well, it was clear that the Tandy 1000 was going to be the logical step forward after people were wanting to move on from their 8-bit systems. Even my 80 Micro changed from being a TRS-80 magazine to a Tandy MS-DOS magazine. All right, so we're getting to the end of this now. Anyone got any questions so far, or are we? You must all be enjoying this, which is good. Because I was stressing out while I was doing this thing, because I was like, how many slides is too many? So, all right, let's look back at what happened. So the Model 4, a cost-reduced version, came in 1984, which was the gate array version. The portable version came along, that was the 4P, and then finally the 4D, which was available in Radio Shack catalogues till 91. I speculate that the 4D was they produced all of them in 86 or 7, and they just had a warehouse full of them, so it stayed in the catalogue till they were all exhausted. And Tandy wasn't interested in dropping the price below $1,100. So for those who wanted it, you had to shell out $1,100. And for those who needed a home computer, they had at least 3 different MS-DOS machines that were under that price. So you can see that really Tandy was encouraging people to move to their 1000 SX, EX and HX models. The IBM PC was actually replaced in terms of specifications with the IBM PS2 Model 30 in 1987. The PC Junior, like I said, was dropped after 14 months. And then they tried again in 87 with the PS2 Model 25. It was better received than the PC Junior, but it was overpriced, and for a lot of people, I think they looked at the price of the Model 25 and said, for a few hundred more I can get a Model 30, which is a real computer, and so that flopped again. Tandy 1000 became the 1000A. It had some improvements. They forgot to put a maths coprocessor socket in the 1000. That was a little bit of an oversight, so the 1000A has that. Then they worked out how to install a 10 meg hard drive, and that became the 1000 HD, which was a pretty good machine. It was under $2,000, had 256K RAM and a 10 meg hard drive. It was a good performer. And the 1000 SX then came after the 1000, which I think is probably the best of the XT proper compatible 1000s. It has 5 slots, but none of them need to be used for RAM. You can put the whole 640K on the motherboard, so you've got a lot of expansion ability in the SX 1000. And eventually IBM, I forget the exact date, did release an 8 megahertz version of the IBM PC AT. And it's finally something that's as fast as this thing. So that took them a few years to catch up with this. And then if you remember the IBM PC PS2 Model 50 desktop computer and Model 60 tower computer, they replaced the PC AT. So why could you still buy this in 1987? This is a story, anecdotally, that I'm going to finish on, that was relayed to me from Frank Durder. We were talking on the Usenet, which is an old internet messaging system, predates World Wide Web and things like that. And we were talking, and I go, if clearly by March 1984, sorry, this thing wasn't going to fly, why is it still available in 87? Because even the Tandy 1000 had been reduced by then. And Frank, his description of it was that there was a higher up, a buyer at Tandy, who was leaving the company, but he signed off to get a large number of them. I don't know the number, but I'm going to speculate maybe 15,000 built the day before he left, signed off it, and Tandy didn't realise this until they were nearly all completed. And so then once they're completed, they're stuck with them. And Frank was saying that where he worked, they had just the floor covered in boxes of Tandy 2000s, and they debugged the Tandy 6000 on benches made out of boxes of Tandy 2000s. They had so many of them. So it just stuck in the catalogue and sold in small numbers until they were finally exhausted of them. Now, what you can see on its screen there is that VersaCAD thing, and even when this was phased out finally in 1987, it was still an excellent CAD system for $2,499 plus the cost of software. So that's why it was still available in 87. Otherwise, if they hadn't got this extra bunch built, it probably would have disappeared by the end of 1984. So with that, my talk is over. Anyone want to buy me a drink? All right, question time. Anyone got any? Oh, hands everywhere. Front row.
So the prices that you're showing there, is that from an Australian magazine or are those US dollars?
So yeah, the question was, is that US or Australian dollars? That's out of the US catalogue there. So these are US dollars. They're still expensive machines when they were new.
Inflation calculator puts that at $7,300 equivalent.
Yeah. Like Tandy, I always, they will happily produce a computer for everyone at any price point. And if the task you needed to accomplish required one of these, you could, I don't know, buy it for $7,000 equivalent and write it off on tax over 3 years or something. Next question, Joel.
Given the Tandy 2000's hardware, after being orphaned, the upgrades you could get, are you aware of any software or patches that are outside of the catalog that we know of that works with the 2000? Are you aware of any highly popular titles or games that were patched to run on it?
Okay, so his question was, what's the software base like and what was patched for it? By 87, most of the popular software that would run on it had been patched by the companies that produced it, and you could order it through Tandy's express order system for it. So, and that's all the Ashton Tate software, the Lotus Corporations, Microsoft Word, and a few other things for it. As far as support and patching other software to work on the machine, there was a newsletter which ran for a few years. I think it was called Whimper, which is a strange name, but they kind of like the computer came in with a boom and went out with a whimper. That was why they called it that magazine. And that had information there on how to patch some of the software, but it wasn't a real big thing. So yeah. Most popular software, though, was eventually available on it. Yep. Another question?
Another question, Ian. I wanted to add something on the Tandy 2000. So I was working for Radio Shack back in 86, 87, upstate New York, rotating between a few stores. Each store we only had one inventory count in the 2000, and it was the system that we used to update our dailies to Fort Worth each day.
Yes, yep. So, forgot your name, Paul. Yeah, Paul just mentioned that, in the mid to late 80s, they were very difficult to find in the stores. Most stores used one for in-store bookkeeping and so on, but I would imagine that if you decided in 87 you needed this one to do some CAD work, you had to go to a computer centre and they would ship you one down from Fort Worth or wherever they were stored. They didn't have them to just buy off the table there. Question, John?
Well, more of a comment. The other thing that was interesting about the 2000 is Xenix was ported to it.
Correct. Yep. John just mentioned that Xenix was ported to it. I haven't seen it running, but that's in fact true, and it would be interesting to see sometime. Okay. Any last? Yep.
Is the Tandy 1000 and 2000 keyboards plug compatible?
Nope. They look the same.
Yeah, they do.
And in fact, under early Tandy 1000 keyboards, there's a sticker underneath. It says Tandy 1000/2000 keyboard, but the pin out of the cable is different. So these ones on the 2000 say, I don't want to get it wrong, Tandy TRS-80 personal computer. Also, you notice that's a TRS-80. After that, they became Tandys. And the Tandy 1000 keyboard has Tandy personal computer written on it. But the other way to tell if you're looking from a long distance is 2000 keyboards have a black cable, 1000 keyboards have a whitish grey cable. Yeah. Yep. Are we just about finished? I think we're just, oh yeah, shout your life. Have you got one there?
I've got a Tandy 1000 SX over here, but its keyboard says just Tandy 1000.
Yes, that's right, yeah. They realised, so what was your name?
Phil.
Phil just mentioned, because he's got a later model 1000 keyboard there, that they did realise after a while that they weren't compatible, and so they changed the label underneath them to reflect that, so it just says 1000. But you will find early ones, I've seen a lot of them, that say 1000/2000 underneath. So, all right, I think we're just about done. A little bit of advertising for Kenneth. Our display system here, which runs perfectly, is available for purchase on Kenneth Vrana's desk there. Yep, the computers is.
No, Peter just bought it.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not for sale. That's how quickly good running Tandy 2000s with the colour monitors go for. Oh, all right. Thanks, everyone. And don't forget, we've got the auction, which I'll be running tomorrow, and then the trivia game, which again I'll be running because I don't do enough stuff when I'm here. So, okay, guys.